Oh, hey, it's you. Hang on a second. I'll be right with you. Flat Earth. Flat Earth. Look, man, Earth is round. We've known that for 3,000 years. The idea that people used to think the Earth was flat is at this point a bigger hoax than the idea that the Earth is flat. Anyway, I was doing some reading on this a couple of years ago, and it turns out that only a very small percentage of the people who advocate for the idea that the world is flat actually believe the world is flat. They're doing this for sort of troll reasons because they get lots of attention on the they get lots of attention on the internet. It bumps up the visibility of their channels. They get more clicks. They make more money on the YouTube. They make more money on the TikTok. They sell more albums. Like when a music person is getting into this, they sell more record albums, and so record albums. Like it's 1987. So they do it. And Flat Earth was the point of the original dude who came up with this. I forget his name. Some British guy in the 19th century, if memory serves. The point of it wasn't that he believed the Earth was round. The point of it was that he could argue any false thing to his own satisfaction and convince other people that the false thing was true, right? That's the point of Flat Earth, is to demonstrate jokingly, trollishly, that there are limitations on logic and on human argument, our ability to use logic to reach logically valid conclusions, right? That's the point of it, is to demonstrate that with rhetoric you can prove all sorts of false things true in the public sphere. You could get people to believe in six-day creationism, or that conservatives have your best interests at heart, or that Democrats are running a pedophile ring out of a pizza shop in, I forget where they put that, fucking Milwaukee or something, right? As conspiracy theories go, it was more like birds aren't real than a real conspiracy theory. What else? So, maybe you've seen the meme of that, like, really famous anti-trans boy, and we've sort of forgotten he comes out of the sort of conservative anti-trans, troll, inflammatory edgelord community, and he's sitting at a table and there's a sign and it says something that's false is true, aliens eat breakfast in Roswell every morning, change my mind. And the one thing that you know is if you stop at his table, the original sign probably said something like he doesn't believe in trans people, change his mind. And the one thing you know is that he's a flat earther. Like, he might not believe himself that the earth is flat, I don't know, but he gets clicks by demonstrating a belief in false things and being able to argue that those false things are true. And he's really, really good at rhetoric. And so you sit down, he's never going to change his mind. When you dance with the devil doesn't change. You do. You got my notes. End of the school term. I always celebrate with a little partial suicide. I'm done with the cash in the background. Let's fix this guy. All right. Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you. There's the Gulf War thing. Cheney and Rumsfeld. Cheney works for the people who manufacture weapon systems. And he sort of seems to convince George W. Bush he needs to go back and finish his father's job, what George Bush Sr. started in the Gulf. He needs to go in and do regime change in Iraq. They need to oust Saddam Hussein. So sort of the lie that gets us into that war is that Iraq is developing WMDs. They have chemical weapons, they have biological weapons, they might have a burgeoning nuclear program. Nuclear because it's Bush, Bush Jr. So we have to go in there, right? We have to stop that from happening. We have to fight them over there so that we're not fighting them over here. And one of the things, I forget if it was Rumsfeld or Cheney who said it, paraphrasing Carl Sagan, who paraphrased some other guy from 1888, because we didn't find WMDs. We went in there and killed a bunch of people, and 100,000 soldiers or something surrendered, sometimes to film crews, as made famous in A Few Good Men. And we didn't find Shinola for WMDs. They just weren't there, buddy. So Cheney or Rumsfeld or whichever, they're all interchangeable in my head. He goes, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Did you lie about the reasons for going into the Gulf? We haven't found any WMDs. Well, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And that's an equivocation. We'll wrap back around to here. And then, this is argument to ignorance, right? Well, you can't show that there aren't aliens or God or fairies that cause cancer and tobacco's perfectly safe. It isn't safe. Don't smoke, kids. Don't smoke cigarillos. It's bad for you. So in debate, apologetics usually supplants a disciplined inquiry, the stuff that is at the heart of philosophy of science, right? So the argument to ignorance. We don't know how the Egyptians built the pyramids. It could have been aliens, right? Prove it wasn't. Prove it wasn't aliens. Go ahead. I'll wait. And never mind that we kind of do know now how the Egyptians built the pyramids. We have really good information about virtually every step in the process. And pretending the Egyptian people 4,000 years ago couldn't have done that level of stonemasonry, that they weren't sophisticated, is, it's pretty racist, right? We don't know exactly how the universe was created. There's always going to be something we don't know about that, right? Because the universe was so hot at the very beginning that any sort of EM signal, EM emission that might be informative was just completely obscured by the heat. So there's always going to be at least this fraction of a second right at the very beginning. Even if we could send stuff out, 15 billion light years and gather that EMF stuff as it arrived, there's nothing to arrive. There's nothing to see. There will always be some unknown, and then into that unknown we like to thrust Jesus. You can't prove that God didn't create the universe. Okay. Us common folks, we don't understand microbiology. We don't know how the COVID vaccine works. There could be anything in there, right? I know shit about cars, okay? And I was buying this car a few years ago, and the lady at the dealership, we're driving around. She asked me to pull over into this strip mall, and she opens the hood, and she's pointing out stuff under the hood. And I'm like, I don't know what's in there. That could be anything. That could be a sewing machine and a couple of hamsters and a French dude smoking filterless cigarettes complaining that life is pointless, Could be anything. What are you showing me this for? And the regular person understands microbiology even less than I understand the engine of a car. And so you start saying there's room in there for microchips so that Bill Gates can track your movements and stuff. Because though he doesn't track your movements on your goddamn cell phone already, you voluntarily surrender all of your data to YouTube and Amazon and Facebook and X and stuff, right? And TikTok. Jesus Christ, come on, man. Wow. What's the other thing? Oh, we don't understand signals. We don't understand 5G. What the hell is 5G? Could 5G be radiation? Could it give mommy cancer faster than this stuff? Uh, so when you're largely ignorant of stuff, and especially when there's this whole like community around you encouraging that ignorance and telling you knowledge is sin, right? If you uncritically read a biology textbook, you're sinning against the Lord, you're becoming worldly. Well, you keep people in this condition of ignorance where arguments like, you can't prove it wasn't Jesus. I mean, those make sense. You can't prove there aren't microchips in the COVID vaccine, right? Go ahead, prove it. I'll wait, you know? Right. Unfair debate tactics. So there's Russell's teapot, right? And Russell's teapot pretty much explains why these kinds of arguments are specious. They're specious arguments, and the conclusions you get at the end of them are spurious. So Russell's teapot. Imagine there's a teapot. He didn't put it opposite the sun from us, but I'm going to. He says there's a teapot and it's like, it's out there around the orbit of Mars or something. It's so small that no instrument we have on Earth will ever be able to detect it. So you can point your instruments there. I can tell you it's there. I can tell you which Lagrange point of Mars it's at. And you can point your teapot there, you can point your telescope there, and you'll never see it, but you'd never be able to see it. It's too small, and we painted it black, you know? Technology advances, and I don't know, maybe one of our other kinds of radio telescope could see it or something. I don't know. So I'm going to put it on the other side of the sun. It's in following Earth orbit, right? But it's opposite the sun from the Earth. And so the sun will always, 100% of the time, be between you and that teapot. So there's no instrument that you could devise, really, that could even look there, even if it was powerful enough and sophisticated enough to detect something the size of a teapot. And therefore, good black pill viewer, are you required to accept the premise that Russell's teapot is real? Huh? Are you required to accept every unfalsifiable premise? I could say anything, right? Was it the oatmeal? This was like right at the time of Flying Spaghetti Monster. You also can't prove there's not a Flying Spaghetti Monster in charge of everything. But Oatmeal comic did like, there's a lobster and the lobster hides behind Mars or Venus or something, so you can never see it. And the lobster wants sacrifices and whatever. And you can't prove it's not true. And that is just as valid as saying, you know, whichever God or Jesus or Thor or Allah or whatever, like everything in the Bible that can be falsified, that is falsifiable, largely has been falsified. It's just that the people on the other side of the argument is why debates don't lead us anywhere. Just don't accept the evidence that most of these propositions are false. All right? And then the stuff that can't be falsified is stuff like, is there a God? But am I forced to accept the premise that there's a God? Just on like this ambiguous stuff. They'll point at the sky. They won't point at my shabby tool bench and shit. They'll point at the sky and like life itself and the grass and stuff and say the splendor of life is evidence for God. I'm like, well, I mean, it could be evidence for a lot of things, couldn't it? It could be evidence of microbial process. It could be evidence of panspermia. I don't know. It could be evidence of chemical processes, right? Why pick this particular one? There's the least evidence for this particular one. And we have an argument about what evidence means. And so all this is to say that falsifiability is absolutely at the heart of disciplined inquiry, of the kind of disciplined inquiry that gives us the philosophy of science as we construe it in modernity. A theory is an explanatory framework that leads to one or more falsifiable hypotheses. Falsifiable in principle, there at least is in principle a way that I could test this show it to be false, and then we would stop believing in it. Okay, and outside of the debate hall, right, in real, actual, disciplined inquiry where there aren't apologists, when a thing is demonstrated to be false, you stop believing in it. Science doesn't demonstrate things to be true. At best, the best science, it attempts to demonstrate things false, and then sometimes fails, right? And when and after repeated testing of an idea like evolution through natural selection, tens of thousands of attempts over the last, I don't know, 160 years or something, and they've all failed to demonstrate evolution through natural selection false. And so we say it's a theory, but remember the equivocation thing from the last video, right? Theory to a scientist is an explanatory framework with falsifiable hypotheses, and we retain the theory if it withstands scrutiny, if it withstands repeated attempts to demonstrate it false. That's what a theory is. It's not just some harebrained dude at a harebrained table with a harebrained idea on a sign saying, prove me wrong, because that guy is a master of rhetoric and you will never prove that asshole wrong, right? Oh yeah, that's what I came here to say. Black pill out.